G'day everyone, welcome one and all to another edition of Guvs Hero Review videos, in which we will today be checking out another of the rock band's heroes. Specifically, we're going to check out the brand new legendary green heroine, Shuffle, who is the Groovy Drummer. Now, Shuffle is available, as we saw just now, from the Battle of the Bands portal, which rolls around once every 12 weeks. It's on a 4-week alternating calendar time slot with the Mercenary and Zombie events. So you got 4 weeks and an event appears, and then every 3 occurrences, it's the Battle of the Bands. So it's roughly every 12 weeks that it comes around. Shuffle has just been freshly added to PuzzleCombat at the time of this recording in June 2024. So the event itself, it's quite old now. The very first appearance of the Battle of the Bands was in August 2022. So it's almost been 2 full years since that event was released, and Shuffle is only just now being added to the portal. So the portal odds themselves, we can take a quick squeaky peek at them. So we can see there is a 1.2% chance for a legendary event hero, such as Shuffle. There are 9 heroes in the portal at the moment that are of the legendary tier, so basically the odds do drop off quite a bit for a specific hero. So if you were to do 100 summons in this portal, across those 100 summons, you would have a 70% probability of gaining any of the event legendary heroes, but just a 12.5% probability of gaining a specific event hero, such as Shuffle, if you were after her. I'm just going to flip across and we can take a quick look at her artwork. Alright, so here we have the artwork. Thank you very much, Casper, for providing this one. So, Shuffle is the Groovy Drummer, so we've got some of those Jackson 5 sort of vibes going on in terms of like the afro and the groovy, probably I guess jazzy, I guess is possibly the outfit. I don't know, whatever. I'm not really a history music buff or anything like that, so that's the artwork. Feel free to pause it if you wish, but otherwise, obviously the main things are there. We've got drums, we've got cymbals, and we got drumsticks, so what more could you want from a Groovy Drummer? I will say I probably do like the Demon Drummer or Warlock's artwork a little bit better, but that's just personal preference, I guess. But it'll be interesting if it's like the Battle of the Drummers kind of thing. If they have like a drum off, I wonder who would win. My money would probably be on Warlock, but you know, well, I guess it would have to be I don't know, anyone's game or anyone's guess. Anyway, getting sidetracked. Let's jump back across and we can take a bit more of a look at her skills and her card. So, Shuffle is a member of the Rock Band family, which means that she is granted automatically some armor at the start of each wave. The amount of armor that is gained is equal to 10, 15, 20, 25 or 30% of her maximum HP if there are 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 unique Rock Band family members in the battle. So notably, they do have to be unique heroes. It can't be just 2 copies of Shuffle. It's got to be 2 different heroes, like combining Shuffle with Undertaker or Fiddle or Jolt as a couple different examples. I will make a little clarification. When it says at the start of each enemy wave, the start of a battle generally counts as a wave. So even though in raiding there are no waves, the start of the battle will trigger the family bonus and grant Shuffle that immediate armor. Rock Band family members are also given a bonus when they're used during the Battle of the Bands event. Specifically, they gain an attack and defense bonus. So they gain plus 4, 8, 12, 16 or 20% attack and defense, depending on if there are 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 unique Rock Band family members in your team. Notably, that stat bonus only applies during the event stages. It doesn't apply in any other facet of the game. It's only during the event stages. In her personal stats, Shuffle comes in with 601 attack, 900 defense, and 1,575 HP. So we can see that there is an almighty skewing going from that attack stat towards both the defense and HP. Mostly, though, it's falling into that defense stat, although some of it has landed in HP, but there is quite a massive skew there going from the attack to those defensive stats. I will point out as well the power level. So Shuffle comes in with 734 total power. Some of the more recent heroes in the game, like Topaz is 742. So there is a little bit of a gap there. Although some of the older heroes from the portal do come in quite a bit less as well. So if we take a quick look and we can see, you know, heroes like Zigzag are 711, and some of the intermediary heroes like where's Mayhem gone? There you go, Mayhem 728. So there is a little bit of a power discrepancy there between the newer heroes and the older ones. All the power means though, in terms of what it does, power just reflects their total base stat distribution. So more power just means that there are more stats to distribute amongst the different effects, or the different categories really. In terms of her speed, the next up, Shuffle comes in with 38 speed, which is quite slow. So 12 tiles to charge is what that comes out as being, or 6 ghosted tiles. The speed break happens at speed 43, so it does need to get up +5 speed improvement, which you can actually do. There is a speed gun that will get you there, albeit there is only one speed gun in green. So it's the Weapon of the Month, the Relic Hunter Bargo. Now this speed gun gives you +6 improvement, so obviously 6 is greater than 5, so that'll get you that speed break down to 11 tiles. The double break is impossible. You have to get up to speed 50 or a +12 speed improvement, so even if there were a +9 gun, the 2% class node on her talent tree is not enough to get that break. So there's little to no effect or impact. Actually, there is no relevance of the speed node whatsoever, unless of course you're running with a unleveled speed gun. So like +4 I think will break, but I don't think +3 does. But anyway, I wouldn't pick up the class node to gain additional charge generation. It's not worthwhile. On the topic of her class, Shuffle is a member of the Sentry class, which grants her the chance to armor up and gain 5% armor after taking any damage in battle. So we can see that effect there. The damage itself, it can come from any effect. It can be tiles, it can be minions, it can be DOT, it can be any of those sort of things, and that will trigger the armor up. I don't mind it. The downside is though it only procs once per turn at the very end of the turn. It doesn't apply at any other point, so you can take a lot of instances of damage and you're not going to gain much benefit out of it. The other real negative is that it's quite lackluster compared to the Medic talent. The Medic talent gives a 7% healing spray to all allies, whereas the Sentry talent is only to the caster. So this is kind of what I would be doing in terms of an emblem path. I'd be definitely going that defense and HP route, prioritizing defense over HP if I had to choose. So I'll just bring up a blank one and we can draw it on there. So ignore the fact that this says it's Sabotage. This is the path that I would follow for Shuffle. We would be picking up defense as our first priority and HP as the second. So off the bat, we're going defense. We'll pick up defense and HP at each of the next 2 points. And then finally at the end there, I'd pick up the double defense node and I would stop at +18. Like I mentioned, +19 is of virtually no relevance. The speed node doesn't do anything, and the crit node, I mean, you could get it if you were really wanting to, but I probably wouldn't. I also definitely wouldn't go +20 for a minor defense improvement. Those stats are not worth the emblem output. So this is the path that I would follow. I would definitely stop at +18 if I were to emblem Shuffle, but generally, I probably wouldn't put emblems on Shuffle. I'd leave her at a low emblem count personally. So yeah, that's the artwork, the emblem path that I would follow for Shuffle, so feel free to pause it if you wish, but otherwise, we'll jump back across and have a look at the last part of her card before jumping into her skill. So I will say while I'm scrolling, the reason I picked defense over HP is that Shuffle generates armor, so added defense means that those armor units that she generates for herself will go further. The final part of her skill, which is quite unique, or final part of her card, is the passive. It's unique to the Rock Band family members at the time of this review. No other heroes actually have a passive effect other than the Rock Bands. So in the case of Shuffle, her passive ability is to apply a 1x defense increase stack to all allies at the end of each turn. Each stack is worth +2 defense, and a maximum of 20 stacks can be applied to any given hero. So that results in, obviously, 40% defense. I think. Yep, that's right. So stacks are wholly separate to other buffs and ailments. You can actually layer multiple buffs and ailments with stacks of the same effect. So you can have positive or negative defense buffs or ailments with this defense stack that's active, but because of that, the only way to actually reverse stacks is with their inverse typing. So the only way to get rid of a positive stack is with the negative version, and vice versa. So because of the exclusivity of this effect to Rock Band heroes, and hence the limited options available, the only way that you can reverse Shuffle's stack is via Undertaker, who's got a negative defense stack in his skill. And similarly for Undertaker, the only way to reverse his negative defense stack is with Shuffle's positive defense stack. So yeah, that's everything before we dive into the special skill, which is titled Funkadelic Beat. And at level 10 skill and 38 charge speed, it will provide 385 armor for the caster. It will then apply a plus 94% defense against red to the caster for the next 3 turns. Then also give a taunt buff to the caster for 3 turns. And finally, will apply plus 2 stacks to the caster with each of those stacks, again doing plus 2% defense. And again, going to a maximum of 20 stacks. So normally, once we've read the special skill, I'd launch into this comparison section of the video where I have a look at Shuffle and compare it to other damage dealers or other healers. But as we see, Shuffle is one of a very, very small set of heroes or subset of heroes that actually has no damage and no healing. There's no real way to apply a comparison to other heroes unless I was to break it down and have a look at all of the individual self healers, which I just am not going to do. But I will have a look at each element of her special skill, and I will do a bit at the very end where I compare Shuffle to some other similar heroes. But for now, let's just dive into each of those aspects of her skill. So we'll start with the armor. So she adds 385 armor to the caster. Now, it is instant armor. It's not over time. It will basically just press fire armor on her. So that is really good. Gains it immediately. The number itself, 385, it's a bit of a weird number. It kind of hangs in the middle of a lot of the values, the magnitudes of healers. It comes out as being 24.4% of her base HP stat, which it's not bad. It's effectively a quarter overheal from her effect. And then you also factor in that she does gain as well armor from her family bonus at the start of the raid, so you can get a little bit of armor going off her skill. The downsides really though, for me, outweigh the benefits. So number one, obviously armor is not health, so even though it acts as pseudo healing, it is not the same as healing. So what I mean by that is armor doesn't push you out of range of HP based effect. So there are heroes that have skills which deal more damage based on the HP level of the enemy, such as Darkskull. He triggers a really heavy DOT effect if the enemy has less than 50% health. And similarly, Cooper as well kicks out a crapload more damage against heroes with low HP. So it also puts these heroes at risk when they only have armor and no healing of armor piercing effects. So armor pierce effects, like on weapons, they actually deal a proportion of that damage through the armor to the base HP without necessarily having to wipe out all of the armor first. So not necessarily a game breaking thing or a hero ruining thing. It is just something to be aware of. The other real downside that I have, or the other disappointment for me, is that there's no effect to all of her allies, to any of her allies at all from this. And this was really the opportunity for Shuffle to have a wider ranging impact on your team than just the taunt. And if we look at other healers in the game, right, and I'm going to take some of the oldest healers in the game. We've got Jocasta and El Coyote. Both of those are heroes from like 6 years ago. They are like effectively the same speed. They both require 12 tiles to charge, but they both generate 500 HP heal to all allies. Shuffle does less than that magnitude to herself only. You look at a newer hero into the game as well, Pulse. Pulse is a 12 tile to charge hero and does upwards of 600 HP when you factor in both the minion and the immediate heal that she does. Again, Shuffle is dealing 385 to herself only at the same speed. So I really feel that this self armor is the biggest miss on her entire skill. I really genuinely do feel that this was the opportunity to make Shuffle a really great hero, was to combine Taunt with a healer, and a decent healer. Like if this 385 was for herself and nearby allies, or herself and all allies, then I think she would have been actually quite a really great hero. But this for me is the biggest sticking point and the biggest downer on her entire skill. Just comparing her to some of the old, really the oldest heroes in the game do, more than 5 times, more than 6 times the amount of healing than what Shuffle does at the same speed. So, yeah. Anyway, I'll move on from that. We'll move on to the next part of our skill, which is the defense against red buff. So the caster gets plus 94% defense against red for 3 turns. So it is a defense buff. That's really good. It feeds into the damage calculation and will ultimately reduce the amount of damage taken. It is, however, only a defense against red. So it only affects damage coming from red sources. So we're talking red tiles, red hero skills, red slash attacks, red minions. They're only coming from red sources. So it's realistically only 1/5 of the damage in the game is being reduced. Similarly, it is a defense buff. It's not an immediate damage reduction. So it will reduce the damage, but not by the 94% that's listed on the skill. It's a 94% defense increase, which results after the damage calculation as being roughly a 59% damage reduction. So we're talking over 50%, almost 60% of the damage is reduced, but again, it's only coming from red sources. So 94%, 3 turns, relatively standard. Again, most heroes that have this style of effect have this value and this magnitude. There's only one difference, which is Mayhem, who's 48%. It's a bit weird. I don't know why, but he's the oddball. Generally speaking, I don't find this to be a very useful effect. It has uses only in the raid arena because you don't use it anywhere else. You won't use it in war machines because you never take the weak hero color to the war machines. There's no impact on eventing or anything like that. So really it's only attack or like raid, attack and defense situations and wars as well. So again, as I said, I don't really find it as much of an issue because you just use damage from the other elements because it's only blocking 1 of the 5. It also is worth pointing out that all it does is effectively undo strong damage. So strong damage, so red damage against green normally would do double damage, whereas this does half of the double damage. So it takes it back to effectively neutral or natural damage there as well. This also, I will point out, is even more of a non-issue on Shuffle because of the range of her effect. Every other hero that does this effect gives it to more than just themselves. Nima gives a purple buff to all allies. Jack does a red buff to all allies. Hairwear variant does the buff to himself and nearby allies. Shuffle, just herself. Again, why? I don't know. Her speed is that slow that she really could have given it to all allies, and it probably would not have changed her very much in her usefulness. Like, it wouldn't have really changed the effect, but it would have made it better than what it is now. So again, another point where where Shuffle is just like, she could have been up here, but just isn't because of how her skill is being executed. The highlight though, and that's the next part of her skill, the highlight is the Taunt. So the caster gets Taunt that prevents enemies from using special skills on the caster's allies for 3 turns. Taunt is amazing. I genuinely love Taunt. It is probably my second favorite effect behind charge control. And the reason for that is that it is so powerful when you time it right. It is able to completely neuter enemy special skills by taking away the majority of their damage in their range. You have an AoE 5 enemy, they would normally hit all of your heroes with their damage. Under Taunt, you only take 1 of the 5 instances of damages. So it's effectively an 80% damage reduction straight off the bat there. There are not many Taunt heroes in the game, so it's not a saturated field, which makes Shuffle still very valuable as a taunting hero. Generally speaking, Taunt heroes, they need added survival because you're effectively redirecting damage, particularly snipers and multi-hitters. You redirect their damage onto the Taunter. So in order to really be able to thrive or survive, Taunt heroes need added survival, which we see on Shuffle. We do see her executing that quite well, right? We've got very, very chunky stats. We can see, again, there's that massive skewing going on from her HP and her defense stat, so that really helps her to survive. We also have the defense passive stack that helps her as well, and to some minor extent we do have the red defense buff as well. All of those things do synergize well with it being Taunt, as does the armor generation she has for herself. So all of those things are good. It's good good synergy between her secondary effects and her primary ability, which is the taunting. One final note on Taunt, obviously 3 turns, it's standard. Pretty well all the Taunt heroes have 3 turns, but a really great combination for Taunt is with counterattack. And fortunately for Shuffle, green does have a couple really good counterattacking heroes of the same element. So you've got Ayumi and you've also got Tamika, because what it does is it forces enemy heroes to target the counterattack. So if you put Tamika or Ayumi next to Shuffle and you have both effects active at once, the sniper normally might hit someone with counterattack, they might not. With the taunt and counterattack active at the same time, they're forced to hit the counterattack and take mega damage. So it's a really, really great effect. And green does have that synergy on color. The final part of her skill is the stack. So the caster, every time they cast their special skill, gains plus 4 stacks, with each stack giving them plus 2% defense. This is an effect that cannot be cleared, and you can get up to a maximum of 20 stacks active. I don't have too much more to say on this effect that I haven't sort of said before. As I said, stacks are separate from buffs and ailments, so you can layer a stack with a similar buff or ailment. For example, you can have Shuffle's defense stack as well as the defense ailment from Ghost active at the same time, or even combining it with the defense buff from someone like Aviana. You can have both because they're treated separately. Defense buffs operate effectively as a damage reduction. We saw that with the red defense buff. So what this means in practical terms, a 2% defense buff is a 2.6% damage reduction. 10% defense buff is a 12% damage reduction. A 40% defense buff, so the maximum amount of defense that you can get from the stack, is a 36% damage reduction. So you do still gain more damage reduction, and it is, as I said, 36%. It's not game breaking. It's not, half, but it is a third of the damage is reduced. The biggest downside here, and it's really annoying to me genuinely, is that this defense buff, when she casts her skill, the stack only applies to herself. So her passive gives it to all allies, 1 stack per turn to all allies, but her skill only grants the defense buff to herself. Now, admittedly, as I said before, it does work well with the taunt. You want her to get as much defense buff as quickly as possible, so that's fine. All right, there's no issue with that, but it's just another missed opportunity, because most of the other heroes that have this sort of effect, they are still giving some benefit to their allies. Like Mayhem, even though he's only generating taunt for himself, he generates his stack for himself and nearby allies. So a little bit of a miss there. The other thing that I will point out, just on a mechanics perspective, is that if you were to take a defense buff and compare it to an attack debuff of exactly the same scale, so both of them doing exactly the same percentage up or down, the attack debuff actually has a greater impact on the damage reduction than the defense buff of the same magnitude. So to illustrate this, Melody has an attack debuff stack at 2% per stack. That is a bigger impact on reducing damage taken than Shuffle's 2% defense buff. So at 10%, this is the number I'm going to use. So plus 10% defense buff gives you a 12% damage reduction. A minus 10% attack debuff is a 13% damage reduction. All right, so just a little bit of extra thing. If you're looking at it from a damage reduction perspective, attack debuff is more impactful than a defense buff. So overall, what's the takeaway message from this? Well, Shuffle is an interesting hero to review. On one hand, she has Taunt, and she has a series of abilities in her skill that have amazing synergy with the Taunt effect. But on the other hand, everything about Shuffle is just undercooked. Like, if we just take a quick look at a couple of the other Taunt heroes in the game, there's 2 main ones that are really notable Taunt heroes. So number 1 is Panzer, right? Panzer and Shuffle, they are both heavily skewed towards their defense stats, like massive skewing going on. Both of them have the 3-turn taunt. Both of them are functionally the same speed. They can both then speed break down to 11 tiles. Both of them have an armor generation effect, although Panzer's is 340 over 2 turns, whereas Shuffle is 385 instantaneously. But where they really differ is Panzer is going on 4 or 5 years old. Panzer has damage that she does to all enemies. Panzer also is a member of the Engineer class, which grants her an 18% minion compared to Shuffle's 5% armor. Alright, so comparatively though, Shuffle, she's effectively 3 or 4 years newer into the game, but she only has the stack and the red defense buff for herself. Both of those effects are really only for herself. So yes, Shuffle is arguably a slightly better taunter on the basis that she has better baseline stats, but it's not by much, not by enough for someone that is so much newer into the game, and factoring in that Panzer copped a massive nerf about 2.5 years ago. So when you factor that in, you've basically released a new hero into the game that is only marginally better than a hero from 3 years ago who was nerfed. Like, does that really make sense? Not really to me. But then you then take Shuffle and we compare her to a modern hero, Mayhem. Mayhem is also a rock band hero. Both of them again have a 3-turn taunt. Both of them have defensively oriented stats, although Mayhem's skew is much less substantial than Shuffle's. Both of them have the defense against X element buff, although Mayhem is doing his for 3 allies, but at 48%, compared to Shuffle, who is 1 herself at 94%. But the difference between their damage reduction is actually fairly muted, right? Shuffle comes in at minus 59%, but Mayhem's comes out as being a minus... I'll just find my note for a sec. Minus 41. So it's actually not that big a difference. It's an 18% damage reduction difference, or damage reduction delta, even though the number numerically is roughly 50% more. The other thing that's a massive difference between the two is their speed. Mayhem comes in at speed 55. He can break down twice at that rate, right? He can get up to the 65 speed threshold when you combine a +9 speed gun with his 2% charge node. Shuffle is stuck way down at 11 tiles. It's a 2-tile difference, 9 versus 11, right? And then you factor in the thing that Mayhem, he's dealing out pretty decent damage to 3 enemies. So when you just compare those two heroes, Mayhem is a little bit older, same family, but is substantially better than Shuffle is as a hero, just generally speaking. So again, I'm not saying that Shuffle is bad, all right? She, by definition of having Taunt, puts her into a category of heroes that is, by definition, very useful, very good. It's just that when you compare Shuffle to other heroes that are in that same category, I feel that Shuffle is just a missed opportunity. Particularly looking at like Panzer and Mayhem as just 2 examples. If we had a look at her and she was, she had a more comprehensive defense buff. Instead of gaining 94% defense against red, she gained a plus 48% defense against all elements. Or if she did all of her effects to nearby allies as well. So she generated armor for herself and nearby, defense for herself and nearby. I think she'd be actually quite a genuinely good hero. She'd be actually useful and she'd have a range of effectiveness rather than just being what she is. So, yeah. Again, though, I don't know. I just feel like, given her slow speed, how modern she or new into the game she is, she just has a lack of impact, which is disappointing. So, for Shuffle's grading, she is still a taunt hero, which does give her a lot of usability, right? So she does still gain pretty decent grades. So for her raid and war attack situations, I'm going to give her a B- here. As I said, Taunt is still a very incredibly useful effect. There is so many uses for Taunt that it is actually ridiculously not funny. So pretty useful there. Speed is really the biggest inhibitor for getting a better grade on that side. On the War Machines, I'm going to drop it down to a C+. Taunt can still be useful against War Machines because they typically have a very hard damage output, so you can reduce that special skill damage from the War Machine via Taunt, so quite useful there. In eventing, she really drops off. I'm going to give her a D- here. There is actually nothing in her skill that would make me want to bring her to an event, either for competition or completion. She's got no damage output. She's got no healing. There's nothing that will contribute towards the scoring of the event. So I'm going to give her a D- there. On the defense side of things, I'm going to give her a C grade for war and raid defenses. I don't think she's going to be a specialist defensive hero. Yes, Taunt is annoying, and yes, she has really defensive stats, but her lack of speed and absolutely negligible impact beyond the taunt just really hinders her. If you were going to put her on your defense team and you emblemed her for it, I'd probably put her at flank or even maybe tank position because of her chunky stats, but I don't see her being a defensively oriented hero, or a good defensive hero rather. In our 3 tournament settings, so Bloody Battle loses her armor, which is like one of the biggest things on her skill. So I'm going to give her a C grade on attack and a D plus for Bloody Battle defense. On the buff boosters, I'm going to give her a C plus and a C minus for attack and defense. Yes, she does create 2 buffs for herself, but it has no impact because she has no damage output. So it's completely pointless on her. Finally, in the charge attack tournaments, her speed is improved. She does go from 38 up to 65, so it is a big speed improvement. So I will give her a B plus for charge tournament attack and a C plus for her defense grade on the charge attack tournament. So overall, that comes out as being a C plus for her overall attack grade and a C for her overall defense grade. And that pretty much concludes the review for Shuffle. As always, these are just my personal thoughts and opinions on these heroes. I do love hearing your thoughts and feedback, so please do drop down to the comment section and leave me a note. I'll try to read and respond as much as possible. If you did find this video to be good, useful, helpful, and all of that, feel free to like it, subscribe to my channel and everything, but also share the video around, because chances are, if this sort of thing is useful for yourself, it's also going to be useful to the people you play with as well. Thank you once again for tuning in and joining me. I do hope I will see you again soon, but until then, good luck, stay safe, and happy gaming. Cheers, bye!